I want us to be absolutely leading the way for women and girls, and that needs to happen now more than ever. But I want it to be a sport that's loved by everybody. We need to build an entertainment product that compels people, women and girls largely, to spend money and time consistently on being fans.
Welcome to Future of Fandom, the podcast where leagues, teams, and federations learn how to turn passive viewers into loyal superfans through gamification, loyalty, and next-gen engagement. Let's build what's next together.
Hi, I'm Sam Westberg, CRO and co-founder of LiveLake, and welcome back to the Future of Fandom. Women's sport isn't just growing, it's being reinvented, and nobody is doing that more deliberately or from a more unforgiving starting point than my guest from earlier this week. Clara Nelson is the managing director of the Netball Super League, and she brings a perspective that not many in sport can offer. She has built fan bases from nothing for audiences the industry didn't understand twice. If you work in sport, media, or fan engagement, this conversation is going to make you think differently. We're covering what it takes to build a league, a brand, and a fan base all at once, commercial strategy, and the big question of where women's sport goes from here. Let's get into it. Hi, Claire.
Hello, how are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
I'd like to always open up our podcast with an introduction of the person that we're talking to, so that it comes from your words versus mine. Can you give a quick introduction of who Claire Nelson is to our audience?
Yeah, I am the managing director of the Netball Super League, and for those probably outside of UK, Australia, New Zealand, who are like, what the heck's netball? What's the Netball Super League? Netball is the most played team sport by women in the UK, and I lead the professionalisation of the domestic league, and we are in the second year since our relaunch as part of a 10-year journey to full professionalisation.
Incredible. It's the number one sport in the UK played by women.
Yeah. Third biggest team sport overall behind men's and women's football combined, men's and women's cricket. And then we've got netball played by 3 million people across the UK every year.
Incredible. And across Europe, how big is netball beyond the UK borders?
So not particularly big across Europe. We are big across the home nations, huge in Australia, New Zealand, big across the African continent, and then in the Americas, in the islands like Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Barbados, and so on. So yeah, we are working on our world domination at the moment, but definitely there are pockets of us, which is why when people from the States catch a glimpse of netball, they're very confused by it because they're like, is this basketball? What's going on here? The rules are different. But largely when you see it and you experience it, you're hooked.
Yep. Nice. Well, before we deep dive into netball specifically, tell us a little bit more about you, because you come from hospitality, running your own business, PR. How did that shape the way you think about what a league can be, and how did it get you to this role in Netball UK?
Well, I played netball when I was young, so there's always that connection, and I don't normally like to start with that. It's a really strange thing, and I don't know if this is the same for men. I don't believe it is, but when you're a woman in sport, and in my sport, the first thing anyone asks me, or a man will ask me, is, "So did you play the sport?" And it's almost like, so I've played it, I need to work in it. And it always annoys me that I actually did play it, but that's not the reason why I'm here. What netball meant to me when I was young, not just because I played it, but because my mum played it and I saw what that experience, it is a largely female sport. It really is dominated by women. We have a men and mixed game that's growing and we love that, but it's really female focused. And for me, and it's also a true team sport because everybody needs to connect with the ball at different parts of the court in order to score a goal. One person can't just dominate. So it's a really connected game. And when I played that sport, for all the things that were going on in my personal life, it was where I felt alive. I felt good at things. I felt sure in myself. So these things stay within you. And I think when you are lucky enough to work in a career that is purpose driven, which it is for me, this is very much a mission, those parts of your life that helped shape your character or meant something stay rooted within you. And so for me, I have been on a career journey. I didn't know what I was good at or what I wanted to do. I sort of found that by falling into things. And I worked in hospitality, but it was very much PR and marketing and that kind of service industry. And I ran my own business, and it was always very much business strategy, helping businesses to scale, launch, grow. But it always had marketing, human connection, and experience is at the heart of it. And I fell into sport, and I got an opportunity to start working in women's sport and netball in 2008. I mean, you know, netball in England was relatively big. Netball in Scotland wasn't really. It was that sport that everyone played at school. A lot of women who worked in sport back then. Women's sport wasn't a business. So I'd had a business background. I was a very passionate, driven feminist who believed in the greater good. I was a young mother of 4 children, 3 daughters, 1 son. And I'd had all these experiences growing up, and all these things start to kind of shape and mold your direction of travel. So when I came into working in women's sport, for me, I always say back then in 2008, I didn't think differently to I do now. What I do now is I have more insight, and the industry's changed, and the more capability to kind of realize ambition and potential. But back then in 2008, I was really like, why is women's sport not bigger? Why is netball specifically? Because most women have played it, most women have an experience of it. Men are fans of sport and enjoy the entertainment and the friendship and the connection that come, and the escape that comes with being a fan of sport. Why is that not in place for women? And so I started to worked in Glasgow Life in the preparation for the Commonwealth Games. I worked on netball. I then, because of personal circumstances with children, started my own business and picked up Netball Scotland as a client who were going to the Commonwealth Games. And I really drove a more commercial approach to working with the sport. What's the brand? How are you engaging? What's the messaging? What are the commercial partners? How are those partners actually helping to add value to your ability to engage or create experiences or reach new audiences? How do we increase visibility? How do we put on events that feel like experiences and compel people to come beyond just being a netball fan? I didn't set out on any journey when I left university in 2002 knowing this is what I'm going to do and what I'm going to be. I just been very brave, followed my heart and sought opportunities. But those opportunities have always been connected to what I think I'm good at and what I can give to this experience and what I can get out of it. And here I am sitting now in absolutely the most privileged place, doing something that's ridiculously hard and challenging. I wish it was easier, but I'm absolutely in the place that I need to be. And I just think timing and experience is everything, and every step I've taken has led me to this place and to being able to sit here and talk about women and female fandom and the future of female sport from a human lived experience, not just let's look at something on paper and go, this is what we're going to build. Actually, how do we connect with people? Because it is audience and fandom that will drive any long-term success.
You arrived at the league with nothing but very little in terms of how it was set up, and we were comparing before we started being recording the podcast, like our entrepreneurial journey with your entrepreneurial journey in some way, because while we're in tech, you're with a league, but it's also starting pretty close from scratch. How does it start? Like, how did you start like building up the brand to actually start creating the opportunity for it, the commercial conversations? Like, help us understand how you're shaping and deploying your vision.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a collective vision. It's not me and mine on my own, although I've had a very strong vision for the sport, and I've talked about wanting to do this role for a long time before I came into it. And the work that I did beforehand was really sort of driving this. This is what the future of netball could be, and this is what the elite domestic game and female fandom should look like. And we did a lot of great work in Scotland there. So we always say with netball is we've got the basics here. It's a massive participation sport. The majority of women sitting in homes right now have played it or have an experience of it, which is a good thing, but also a challenge because you're going to have an idea of what netball looks and feels like. And, actually, I was at an event this week. We were laughing about what netball used to be like at school, what you would wear and what it felt like. And, we've really moved on from there. So you've got a knowledge of it. You've got a fan base. At that time, there was a league running. It had been running with various kind of iterations of teams. It kind of started in universities as an elite game, and there were a couple of independent clubs. There were some associated with rugby teams. Sky covered some games, and we could see growth. We've got a really successful international team in England on the world stage. They got gold and they got Commonwealth Games in 2018. They were, made the final of the World Cup, this huge grassroots game. And we're in a moment where, like, elite sport and fandom around football and cricket is really starting to grow, and it's building pace and momentum. So, we as a sport a number of years ago said we need to get with the program, and we need to start to professionalize what we're doing in the middle here, the bit that connects the dots, the bit that is your shop window, that is going to grow fandom, that is going to, drive the commercial revenues around sponsorship and broadcast. We went through, did some consultation. We looked at what the league should look like, the structure, number of teams. And we also had conversations around PE and bringing investment in. Then COVID hit, which is an indoor contact team sport, pretty much ground us to a halt. But it was also a moment for us to stop and reflect on who our people are and what we want to build. And we decided to not to go down the PE route, which I say often, like when I'm sitting here with no budget and lean resources, I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be great. But we really wanted to back ourselves. We believe in the build and they will come. And we wanted to be masters of our own destiny over shaping our sport. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of value in it. So, for us, it was like, how do we build the product, drive this proof of concept, raise the kind of commercial value of it, and then potentially go back to market at the right time, right for us. So we started our professionalization journey. I came into the organization almost 3 years ago to the day. And we started immediately with a tender process because we knew that without big broadcast checks, big sponsor checks, big central funding investment, there was no, netball isn't a cash-rich sport. There was no central federation going, we're going to give you 50 million to make this work. We're underwriting this. We're driving this. We knew then that we needed to have appropriately funded clubs who could come on this journey. So we went through a tender process, which was one of the toughest, most intense periods of my life. And in that, off the back of that, we lost some of the existing clubs and we brought some new clubs in. And that in itself was difficult. I've talked about this quite a bit, but losing a club because you're trying to do the right thing for the sustainability of the sport and go on a growth journey, it's absolutely the right business decision. But people love it. There were people, like little girls, and that wanted to go watch these players, that had made the signs, that had turned up every single week, and it was devastating for people. But I've always said that we have to make the decisions that are right for the whole sport, and ultimately that we're doing right for all the players and all the fans, and for being able to, the little girls, 5-10 years time, that we're building something that's built to last, because it wasn't previously. It was financially unsustainable. So we went through a tender process, and then, to kind of get to your question, we had to build something that was going to drive growth. And for us, that was very much around the product. So when I say product, it's like, what are people engaging with? Female fandom is largely built around female athletes. We know that we need to build an entertainment product that compels people, women and girls largely, to spend money and time consistently on being fans, because that's not there still. So in the UK at the moment, we are seeing, you've got the likes of Arsenal and Chelsea that are doing really well at the moment. We're seeing huge numbers with the Red Roses getting 70,000 to a game. But the consistency of women's sports clubs every single week getting thousands of paying fans to come is still not quite there because women aren't used to being sports fans. We also have all of the majority of the responsibility over childcare and the mental load in the home. We also are competing not just with other women's sports, but other leisure activities. You've got cost of living crisis, less disposable income, all these things. And we go, well, we've got 3 million people playing this, so they should just turn up because we've decided we're going to professionalize. No, we have to drive something. Said about creating a brand, which is more than a logo, and this is the stuff that I love. I was like, how are we going to show up and be unique to netball? Because we are not a female version of a men's sport. We're not just doing this because this is what's happening right now. And, men's teams need to have a women's team's the right thing to do. No, we are innately female. So we were going to stand for, yes, great sport, but actually being bold and, driving experiences and looking at the intercept between purpose and culture and fashion and music and entertainment. We wanted to really be meaningful in how we showed up as a brand proposition beyond the 4 months of competition that we're playing at the moment.
Basically, you looked at private equity or not. Decided to be, a funded kind of organization, and a lot of it has been through a centralized approach where you help narrow down which were the teams, just to help out the audience understand how many teams are in the league currently, and is it only the big names like Arsenal or Chelsea that actually created teams, or is it like also smaller brands that actually participated to it, just to help understand, like, at a high level, how you build the economic model and how, people came in.
So England Netball is the governing body of the sport, and Netball Super League is a subsidiary of that. And then we have 8 clubs within that. We've got different ownership models. We're not asset owning. We don't have our own big arenas at the moment. So we needed to make sure venue was absolutely central to the decision making of where our clubs were. And we wanted to get a mixture between, can you get 2.5, 3, 4,000 in for standard games, but can we also elevate into major arenas so that we can have some showcase games as well? So who joined? Nottingham Forest Football Club, Premier League Football Club, bought in a netball team that had never been done before. And I think that was really, I think it's socially and culturally game changing, because if you think about the challenges at the moment around how a lot of male football fans can talk about or view women's sport in general, netball is the most female and girliest, and to in perception to the public. And for a Premiership football team to say, we're bringing in netball because we want to engage the community, we want to create inclusive opportunities, and they created this cool, credible club that was not just an add-on to what they were doing, but was wholly integrated into the ecosystem. And, through sponsors and kit and experience and branding and venue, that was really game changing. And that helped to put some eyeballs on us. We've got a club that's owned by a rugby club. We've got a club that is owned by a governing body. We've got 7 English and 1 Welsh. The Welsh team is integrated into their governing body to drive kind of national engagement. And we've got a university team in there, but we've also got independent clubs that are owned, and 2 of those are female founded, and women writing their own checks. London Mavericks and Birmingham Panthers. Birmingham Panthers have since taken on investment from Knighthead Capital, which is Birmingham City Football Club. They've got Tom Brady behind them. So we've really been on a journey, but we've got different models here. And we've got them kind of dispersed across the UK. We've still got some underserved areas, but again, it was because there's no infrastructure there. So we're really, if we're thinking about potential growth, expansion, and development, it has to be integrated into a capital project as well. But all of them needed to have access to a venue and to be able to come on a 10-year journey, because they're not just delivering league matches and competition. They're also driving the pathway. They're also in schools and communities. And the beauty of what we've got here in netball in the UK is that, unlike other sports where actually the domestic league and then the women's league, the men's league, the Premier League, the what happens at a grassroots level, what happens at a national level. They're all different bodies and they'll talk to each other, but you're speaking to different bodies. We've got one integrated ecosystem here. And through the appointment of our 8 clubs, it's enabling us to kind of engineer what the sport looks like from those first touch points at school when you're a little kid, right through to the elite game and the international game and beyond. And it's going to take time, but that for us is part of how we create a sustainable league, because we need to be able to access these people that play the sport every single week. We need to work together as one sport.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, because from an external standpoint, right, like preparing the one thing that is incredibly powerful is you take netball, it's all about women's sport, right? Like, so I think that that is incredibly powerful. And the fact that it's the most played sport in the UK kind of like tackles probably because there's a lot of female sport is seeing, oh, there's a good business model on, let's say, football as an example. So let's do it for women's sport. But actually, the grassroots is not as developed as what it seems to be for the netball. It's just netball is not done in a professional manner. It was always more of a leisure than like a perspective, right? And so my question was going to be about around the long term. And you just mentioned that all the clubs are here for a 10-year journey, right? So it feels like there's all the right groundwork to not fall in the traps of creating a similar business to football, but just for women. No, it is a woman first kind of sport powered by women. And what would be more relevant to have women at the top of that sport because it is a women's sport, right? So by default, intrinsically, there's no question about like it should be an all woman led kind of sport, like if you look at it from a rational standpoint. And it's also not falling down the pattern of quick investment, right? It's not a 3-year thing where private equity comes in and tries to flip the team. No, everybody has to be in there for the long run.
Yeah. We want sustainable.
My question there is how do you transform that? How do you transform that user base into new fans, create new habits of consumption, as you said, because it's hard to get somebody who hasn't been used to go to the venue every weekend to actually start having that behavior. So, like, what are the biggest obstacles that you meet beyond the like picture perfect framework that has been set for the sport?
Oh, I wish it was picture perfect. We're learning, but it's a really interesting one, and one that I've had a lot of conversations about recently. Is we've got a huge participation base, and again, you think, right? Well, that should they love netball, they play netball, and these are like the women in our sport. They have been playing for decades, like decades. So you're right. With the growth of women's football, for example, the majority won't have had the opportunity to have played at school because it wasn't available to them. So they are kind of fans first and then they'll take up the game. Whereas we've got the game. Now, converting that to fandom isn't as easy as you think because the drivers to participate in a sport, to play it, are completely different. It doesn't automatically make you a fan. I was at an event last week with the local netball community and we talked about going back to the start of the conversation when I talked about my experiences, when you play netball, it's friendship, it's a sport you love, it's connection, it's escape for a lot of women. There's someone said to me, it's I get my name back when I play because at home I'm only known as mum, and when I play, I'm get my name back and I get my identity back. A real sense of reclaiming your identity, which for women, for mothers in particularly right now, it's the world is an uncomfortable, complex place for women and girls. So you go to this, you show up if you've been having a bad day or you're tired or you're stressed or you're going through all the many physical things that we go through as women, hormonal, emotional, mental, and you go to your netball and that's your safe place. That doesn't mean I'm going to go and watch it. So we've really had to tap into that and understand that. So when we think about how we are selling a Super League game to these women and communities, we have to stick to the messaging that is at the heart of why they're playing. And it's that connection. So come with your team, come as part of them. It's part of that escape, but with the people that you love. You love playing netball, so come and watch the best at it. And it's with that to be inspired or to go, let's try that in training, or oh my gosh, I could never do that. See the best version of this game you love. To do it as part of something you can bring your children to and your family, or to do it as part of I want an escape from that. So the messaging, the reasons to attend, we work really hard on. We also are aware of cost and time. So we really tried to look at that experience that we put on. You're not just coming to watch a netball match. You're coming to be immersed in an experience. And I am sitting here off the back of one of the most exciting weekends we've ever had in the Super League. We had 3 games go to the wire, and one of them went into extra time. And over 4,000 people in the Copper Box Arena. The energy levels were at the top. That makes people want to come back and want to watch and tune in. So we've worked with our rules to try and drive competitiveness on court. We've worked on the experience to try and drive something more than an amazing game, but a real day out. And then we work really hard with our messaging and how we connect and how we show up on social media or in communities to build relationships, to resonate beyond we're just promoting a fixture and ticket sales here. And it will take time. Like, we've seen growth, but it's going to take time.
Because I was gonna say from a business standpoint, sounds like you have a pretty good idea of who your audience is, right? Because I think also in terms of the numbers you shared, like it's 80% female, 50% under 35. So like there's like you know your audience already, and you're doing all the right things to bring people to the audience for the level of where netball is at. And in terms of your perspectives, right? Because one of the things that also brings the stickiness to a sport and to people committing to coming on a regular basis is also the level of the sport in terms of transforming that grassroots kind of play of everybody playing it for fun to girls aspiring to be professionals and have, like a level of competition that really, I'm off being at a game between PSG and Bayern Munich, and I'm just like, there has been so much knowledge and expertise and training to get to that level of that match. Like, at what point do you think the sport in itself will also help with the global strategy that you're deploying in terms of creating something that is more than just a sporting event, but also an overall entertainment cultural event?
I think we're getting there, if I'm going to be honest. And I think, we're kind of netball is definitely in the UK being seen as one of the leaders in that space, because we are so different, because we are an indoor arena sport. Last year we held our grand final at the O2 Arena in London, which is one of the most iconic venues in the world, let alone the UK. 2 weeks before the Baller League had their final there. And, 2 weeks later, we had 10,000 women and girls playing in the arena, live Sky Sports broadcast. And in my opinion, we had a better production and fan experience, fan energy levels than, Ball League, which is a multi-million-dollar global proposition right now. I wish we had the money levels and the eyeballs, but what we're building is very unique, and we're leaning into that uniqueness. So, in terms of competition and players, we're not on a journey to be as good as the men's game, or we're on a journey to be like, we're elite. We've got some of the best players in the world. Like, we've got the best officials, we've got some of the best players, and we've got exciting netball. We are playing in some of the biggest arenas. We've got games in Wembley coming up in a couple of weeks, the O2. We're taking our grand final to M&S Bank Arena. We will be the first sporting final to be held in the biggest new arena in the UK.
Sorry to interrupt you. How many people are you expecting for that event?
But we'd like to beat last year's 10,000. So that's what we're aiming for. The north is always slightly tougher than London, but after the way this season's going and the build that we've had, this has been a really nice season for us. We've seen an increase in broadcast views. We've got an increase in ticket sales. The netball itself has been really compelling. We brought experts in around our ticketing and digital strategies, so we've seen growth across reach, impressions, and engagement. So, and we're across communities. So I'm really hoping that converts for us, and we can break some more records with our grand final. So we've got these moments. What we're doing is, we call it fewer, bigger, better. Not every single game right now is able to be played in a Wembley or an M&S Bank Arena. So we each club does 2 or 3 games a season in the big arenas, except for Forest and Pulse that put all their games into arena. And so, but we also then we work in an integrated way with the international season. So we're not competing with one another. And we've got this kind of always on opportunity to see and experience elite netball, driving broadcast, driving the live experience. And we also, when we talk about global game, we work really closely with the top nations in the world. And we think about there's no point in one nation or one league or one team, just constantly running forward. We think about how we can all work together. So this summer we've got the Commonwealth Games coming to Glasgow. I'm in Glasgow right now. That's where I'm based. And when we had the 2014 Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, I was the chief exec of Netball Scotland at that time. We saw off the back of that, Netball Scotland, out of all the competing Scottish teams in the Commonwealth Games, experienced the biggest growth in membership afterwards, because all those women that were sitting at home went, "Oh, I used to play netball. That looks so cool. How do I do it again?" It drove that. So with the growth of the Super League season, then going into a domestic games, we're really hoping that this is going to be another sort of springboard of growth for us as we keep driving on this journey.
Yeah, and it's interesting because while you're a league, you're also talking as a federation, right? Like, which a federation's objective is to actually have people get a license and keep playing it because we know it's the safest way for the business to scale. So it's interesting that, and because usually people are just solely focused on the development of the league, but this is something that for the moment the two are too close to each other and to
We look
combine.
at the whole sport because we all win. We all win if we grow the whole sport. And, the clubs, we're not looking at, we want new people to be fans. So, we are working through with Sky and BBC and other media partners and, getting out there into schools and communities. We want new fans. But it really is that conversion of an existing participation base that we need to start with, and that we need to work with the federation. But equally, the federation, or the governing body, needs us to drive the elite game, needs us to drive the talent pool, needs us to be a shop window for people to participate. So this really, for me, it's an integrated system where we should be fueling the other. The success of the international team drives eyeballs and fandom into the domestic game. The domestic game does that the other way. So it's a system that is built to support and drive the whole sport.
Yeah. And just to get back on one of the things that you briefly mentioned, so obviously you've been very focused on the media side of things, on ticketing, and you looked at the private equity, right? So all the modern or ex-modern kind of ways of leveraging the value of your IP. One of the big things is around like that whole digital space where we know that leagues for the moment aren't really digital organizations, and where you're not sitting on legacy and can start from scratch. And because I would assume that one of your biggest potential is the typology of your audience, right? Like 3 million, like users, 80% women, 50% women under 35. Like those are the CSPs that brands are looking out for. What are you doing on the digital side of things to be able to start leveraging that and build on that competitive advantage that you seem to have?
We want to be doing more. So we're doing a huge project at this moment, working with some partners like Amazon Web Services, and we work very closely with Two Circles to really look at our digital ecosystem and what that, because as much as we're talking about we're one sport, we've got different data sets and we need them all in one place, and we need to understand that data. And when we talked about technology before, and I worked in tech, having access to data is wonderful. What you do with it is what matters. Now, we've got a lot of great audience insight. We've got a great way of speaking to and connecting to our audience, but it needs to be more sophisticated. We would love to be able to work with a bigger data set across all of our clubs. At the moment, clubs own their own data, then we've got league data, then you've got membership data, and so on. So this is a huge project, but again, we need to do this properly. This is about sustainable infrastructure for the future, thinking about where the sport may go, thinking about what investment may come in, what our sport might look like in the future, because you can't build for now, you have to build for then. You then have to think about how is technology evolving? And particularly when it comes to women and girls, we can see this in our broadcast at the moment, is the majority of our broadcast audience, which is unlike any other because it is so heavily female. Like what Sky Sports talk about, that 80% and 50 under 35, 80% female. The second highest female kind of broadcast numbers in sport for them is tennis with 52%. So that's how high we are. But the majority of them watch on catch up. They're not sitting watching with an appointment to view. So at the moment, we're still discovering and we're still exploring how women are consuming sport. So, we want free to air, we want catch up, we want to be able to watch it on our own terms in our own time, looking then at gamification, thinking about, kind of how you can better monetize that audience as well, looking at how women consume and buy and spend money and influence those decisions where brand, how our sponsors can engage with that. So, at the moment, we have really focused on our digital content strategy in terms of reach, impressions, engagement, growing our database. What we now want to look at is that whole sport approach. How do we have an effective infrastructure which really drives? And it's got to be more than just firing out emails at people. It's got to be more than that. We've got to be more sophisticated. And how does this give us insight around the customer journey? And how does it take people on build loyalty, build real long-term connection and loyalty? Tech should not be transactional. It should become part of the fabric and thread of a fan experience, and that's what we're investigating at the moment with critical partners.
Would you say that that shift from catch up behavior to live behavior is your biggest challenge right now to get to where you want to get to? Because to me, it sounds like one of the biggest powers of sport. You were mentioning like this event over the weekend and the atmosphere around it, right? Like that's the whole power of sports. And that is why a lot of those private equities and big financial bodies are still investing in sports. It's because it's probably the one last place where the emotions won't be threatened by AI and other types of, like new technology. Would you say that like, yeah, from catch up behavior to live behavior, one of the biggest elements for people to like put netball at the center of their hobbies over the weekend and over the week versus make it be complementary? And I would say that it ties into the bigger point of what you were saying originally, right? Like as mothers of families and etc. Like how do you manage to somehow bring that cultural shift to women having the right for their free time over the weekend to do what they want and for netball to be that what they want to do thing?
That's a really interesting question, and I've not been asked that. And as I'm sitting here and reflecting, why do we need to? Like, I would love to. We will get to the point where we will grow those live numbers, and as we grow the sport and we grow the noise and the excitement and the more awareness around it, we will get those numbers of more people crowding around the TV or however they watch it to watch it live. But why does that matter? Going back to we want fans, and lives today are busy. And what we're doing is we're understanding our audience and we are creating or catering to their needs. And we have seen our broadcast numbers go up. They are going up year on year with a demographic that no other sport has right now and can claim. And one of the things for me that still frustrates me around the industry, and a lot of my colleagues across the industry as well, is that the metrics by which we're measuring women's sport are still based on the traditional metrics of eyeballs. And I just think if I've got an engaged audience of women who are watching on catch up because they are busy consuming other things and they are shaping society and they are leading homes and they are active across other areas of their lives, and they are then watching our sport and consuming it, There's power in that, but we're not thinking like that. It's like you need to Phil Twickenham or you all need to watch at this point, and it's all about numbers. The power, the power of one individual netball fan right now, that's the bit that I want to try and measure, because if I have someone that has played the sport for 40 years, that has affiliated to a governing body for 25 years, that has a home and daughters that are playing the game, that is driving them and taking them, that is making the majority of the commercial and social decisions within the home, and is watching and consuming netball as a fan, the power of that to I've clicked on at this point and I kind of like it, but it's there. You know, we've got to measure things differently, and if we're building fandom, surely we're taking our sport to where the fans are. That's what we're doing right now. Now, Skies needs to sell subscriptions. So, you know, for us, we're going on this journey together. They buy into us. They show 3 of our games. BBC take 1. They're a long-term invested partner. We're all figuring this out. But that's the journey sport's on right now. We don't have the answers, but we're listening, we're learning, and we're adapting to what the fans want.
Yep. Yep. It's interesting. It's making me think, but it's good that you challenge the question, because it's true that for live sports, it's been about us getting a subscription to Sky or Canal Plus for us in France, and then afterwards, but that like media, that media price point has capped right now. What's it's completely uncapped is actually the digital value that you get out of knowing audiences and rethinking your business model. So
Especially with younger people. So I don't, you know, I have my 4 children are teens and young adults. They do not watch TV. They don't watch, they're not going to buy a subscription. They are TikTok, they're a little bit of Insta. That's even a bit more millennial now. They are YouTube and they are TikTok. That's where they are. So again, and this is the thing with that I challenge myself around the live experience and being asset owning. Do we go and build big arenas, you know, for 40,000 people? Will people be filling arenas in the future? Or do I want a million eyeballs on something streamed digitally, because there's power in that? And that's the kind of the journey that we're sort of going on right now. And, you know, that's why Sky are invested in us, because they can see young audiences through us that are watching, that are building an affinity to Sky, who are showing this amazing sport, but we're having to put it on different platforms and make it available in different ways.
yeah, no, it's incredible. Because again, it's thinking not about from our perspective of aging people, but like the younger generation is true. Like my son, who's 10 years old, moving to sixth grade, didn't know what TF1 was, right? Like TF1 would be known as like the BBC. It's not the BBC because it's not a public channel, it's a private one, but it's like the most known French channel. He didn't know it anymore because the consumption has a wide drive eyeballs on that screen, whereas the future is off that screen. Yeah, so interesting. If we're almost at time already, unfortunately, because we could have gone for a lot more time now. But if the NSL gets it right, like what does success look like in 5 years from your perspective and from the organization's perspective?
I mean, right now, the number one thing for me is that it's well funded. Like, you know, we are never short of ambition and opportunity, but you know, building the commercials is our biggest challenge, and it's the same in most women's sport. But I'd like it to be well funded, because if we're well funded, then we can just focus on really building the product. I want it to be in homes and households. I want it to be exciting and compelling. I want people to follow the story of the league. I want people obsessed as fans. And I want it to stand for something and mean something and inspire beyond the sport. You know, the platform that we've built and who we can be and stand for, that's where I'd like to take us. I'd like us to keep innovating as well. You know, we were brave enough, and that's the license that we have because we're not a version of a traditional game. We introduced new rules, we introduced new events last year. You know, we can change things and keep innovating. And I'd like us to be at the forefront of that and be seen as just really cool and compelling. I want us to be absolutely leading the way for women and girls, and that needs to happen now more than ever. But I want it to be a sport that's loved by everybody, absolutely everybody. I want people to be like, this is really cool. So, and you know what? I think off the back of this year, we're absolutely well on our way to achieving all of that.
Yeah, diversifying your audience also 5 years from now. So it's not only women, but a lot of women, but also men picking up the sport.
And we do.
Because
And you know what? Nottingham Forest have really helped with that as well, because a lot of men who support the football team have brought their families along, and that's changed the culture of. You see, there's a lot more of the Nottingham Forest netball fans in kit, because they'll buy the merch, they'll buy the replica kit, because that's what's done in football. That's not a huge again sort of thing that's done in netball. They're driving that change, but I love every man that comes and watches netball absolutely loves it, because it's just great sport. It's great, elite, exciting sport. And these women are absolute machines on the court. And yeah, I challenge everyone to tune in and watch it.
my 2-year-old daughter, when I'm back from India, will be put on a screen to see what she thinks of netball. Claire, thanks a lot. Incredibly interesting. Sounds like you're on an incredibly exciting project right now, and feels very natural. So it's exciting to talk about women's sports, where it's something that feels incredibly natural, and where it feels like the old school mentality of, like, men's sport and having to force women into, like, organization in some kind of way. Feels like we should completely be off of that mindset and say it should be a sports for women by women. There's no reason for it. So it's incredibly refreshing to have gone through this conversation with you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Future of Fandom, and look forward to catching up with you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to Future of Fandom. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and follow LiveLike on LinkedIn for more conversations with the people shaping what's next in the world of sports and media. Until next time, keep building for fans, not just users.